Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Codes of the Unknown. The show is a 12th dimension. Deborah can't be with us tonight. She's preoccupied. So, co-hosting tonight, we have the wonderful Chris.
Thank you. Good evening. And you'll probably notice me. I'm normally known as Eric Von Essex from the Eric Von Essex Show on YouTube every Monday at 8 o'clock. And I have tried dressing like Deb today with a wig and that, but I don't think it was very convincing, was it? So I'm coming as myself tonight. So here we go. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And joining us tonight is the wonderful Natalie Zett. So, a quick bio on her. So, Natalie Zett wrote a book where the main character is not a person but a tragedy that a few have heard of, the Eastland Disaster of 1915. But what happens when you're innocently investigating your family's history and the supernatural intervenes? That happened without seeking or wanting this, and files under the unintended consequences category. Some things you learn from the book, right? Some things you learn from the book, Writing Adventures, when you awaken the dead, expect the unexpected. So, see you guys in 2. Good evening. So let's crack on. Oh, sorry. And big welcome to Natalie.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So, how did all this start?
I don't know, Andy. It was one of those kinds of things where it was a series. How about that? It was
I don't know. I'm going.
I don't know. I'm leaving. I just want to hear you talk. Do your British accents. We were joking before how we Americans just love listening to Brits talk. But seriously, what happened was in little backstory. I come from, at least my father's side, as I was sharing, that all 4 of my grandparents immigrated to the U.S. from Eastern Europe and Central Europe in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And in America, even though we say we don't have a class system, we very much do. And that first line of immigrants from those countries, they were the laborers, coal miners, open stores, things like this. So it was rough going for them. So that's kind of setting the stage. And so I grew up living with my grandfather, who was from what was Prussia, but I learned how to speak 5 languages thanks to living with him. And I just thought that was, that's with many Americans, it's like, oh my gosh, somebody that can speak another language, but that's part of the legacy and the richness of having that background. But fast forward, I was from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is a coal mining town in Western Pennsylvania. Beautiful place, but very difficult and rough place to live, very poor. Right. And so that's the class that I came out of. My father was an entertainer, and my father's side of the family is Carpatho-Rusin, Romani, Ashkenazi Jewish, and Slovak. So that's that side. And he lost his father when he was a teenager. His father was a coal miner in an accident, a really bad accident. And as a result of that accident, my grandfather couldn't take the pain anymore and offed himself.
Oh.
Yeah, and so that was my dad's family. And I mention this because there's a lot of trauma in my family.
Yeah.
My mother's side, it was a wealthier, more not aristocratic by no means, but they did better. They were from Prussia and German, Polish. But her mother died when my mom was 3. So my mother lost a whole chunk of her history because my grandmother, who died, was living in Chicago, but they weren't from there. That's where they were living. So this is how the story starts. So my mother grew up without a mother. My father grew up without a father, and 2 half orphans got together. And my dad was an entertainer, so he got a job in Cleveland. So we moved on up to Cleveland. Yeah. So, which is, if you're in the United States, that would be a laughable moment. But hey, we arrived. So yeah. So that's the background of my family. But and I was a strange little child. And I liked my family, but I wanted to do something else. I was very artistically driven. I wanted to do some interesting things, and I wanted to see the world. Didn't quite make it around the world, but I was in the UK, and I enjoyed that. And I lived all over the place. I went to school in Ann Arbor. And then finally, I wanted to do something totally original. So I was vacationing with a friend, and we went to this place called Minnesota. And I thought, this is great theater community, which I was part of theater, music, all this stuff. I'm not related to anybody up here as far as I knew. I didn't know anybody up here. I could start fresh, and you're in your 20s, you want to do that. So I moved up, and I thought, this is great. And I really distanced myself from my family. I loved them. They loved me, but we just didn't have a lot in common. They didn't understand why I didn't want to stay in Cleveland and work in a factory or something. It's like, So, but as time went by, things changed. My father died then in 1996, very suddenly.
Yeah.
And then that was one of those moments when you lose your first parent. It's like, oh, and there was a lot of, besides grief, recrimination. It's like, oh my gosh, what, it's just like, oh, maybe I could have done things better. Maybe I could have been, could have, should have, whatever.
Yeah.
In the meantime, when my heart's broken open like this, a year later, my mother's sister, who was a reporter in Chicago in the 1930s, who I thought was dead, by the way, decided, I know, we were a real close family, sent me, she knew I was a published writer. By that time, I was a published writer. Yeah. And she sent me this 38-page history of my mother's family, which I knew nothing about. If you remember, I said my mother's mother died when my mom was 3. So she knew nothing about them. I knew nothing about them. And honestly, I thought families are inconsequential. It's what you make of your life, and you can redo things. I've lived to regret those, but anyway. So I started reading this document. I thought, I know nothing about these people. I didn't know that my great grandparents had immigrated eventually to Chicago. I didn't know that my grandmother, my mother's mother, had all these siblings, but there was one page that struck me. It was a story. In Chicago in 1915, a ship that was chartered for Western Electric, and Western Electric, for people that may not know, was kind of the Silicon Valley, the Microsoft, the Google, the everything of North America in that time era, late 1800s, early 1900s. Western Electric had a whole city within a city in Chicago called Cicero. I think they had some ridiculous amounts of people, like 4,500. I don't know, that I might be exaggerating, but a lot of people. They had their own apothecary, their own hospital, their own everything. So every year they had a company picnic. And so they
Right.
chartered ships. And if you know Chicago, if you've ever been to Chicago, I would recommend it. It's an interesting place to visit.
Yeah.
But the ships were in the Chicago River, and they were going to go across Lake Michigan, which is one of our Great Lakes, across the way to
Yeah.
Michigan City in Indiana, which was this lovely resort area. So I think maybe an hour trip or whatever. So the first ship that
Yeah.
was in the Chicago River, which was downtown Chicago, about 2,500 people got on board, Western Electric employees mostly, and the ship itself had issues. It had listing problems. Listings means that the ship would go this way and that way and this way. As soon as those
Yeah.
people boarded, 2,500 people in the Chicago River, which was a very small area, it flipped over like an egg, and it ended
Oh.
up on its side, and people were thrown in the water. 844 people, including my grandmother's sister, 19-year-old Martha Pfeiffer, were killed.
Wow.
And ironically or not, there was a professional photographer on site that point to do the photo op for the picnic.
Yeah.
He ended up being the documenteer of this whole thing. And there's some beautiful photos and actually some lost footage of the event that they just uncovered. It was in a vault in the Netherlands. I don't know what it was doing there, but it was there.
Right.
So this happened in downtown Chicago, where pretty much everybody who was anybody had family or knew somebody that was employed by Western Electric. And so entire families were destroyed. And again, Chicago in 1915, this is in July, so it's hot. Chicago gets really hot. And they had to figure out where to put the bodies. So they were loading horses and cars and everything else, streetcars, whatever. And they were taking bodies to the 2nd Regiment Armory, which is also in Chicago. At the time when I was investigating the history of this, the 2nd Regiment Armory was Oprah Winfrey's studio, Harpo Studio.
Oh, right.
So you know Oprah, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on with this. So it's like, huh? So that's what happened. And of course, my mother grew up not knowing this. I certainly did not know any of this. And I'm reading this and I'm just captivated by this story. And growing up in Cleveland, I had Chicago envy. I mean, they had the gangsters, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. They had the stockyards, the Carl Sandburg's poem. Carl Sandburg was a favorite poet of ours growing up, about Chicago, hog butcher of the world, many writers, many famous writers, all kinds of stuff happened in Chicago, and a lot of the Chicago fire, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I would have learned about the Eastland at some point in history. We never talked about it. To this day, there are a lot of people in this country who've never heard of the Eastland disaster of 1915 with 844 people. And we love our tragedies. So what the heck? So 3 years before, the Titanic happened, as you know, may know. And what happened, the Titanic helped this tragedy happen because as a result of the Titanic, there was a law that was passed where they had to have lifeboats for the numbers of passengers that were on the ship. So the Eastland, besides already being top heavy, had all these lifeboats on top, and it was like a V anyway. And then somebody in their brilliance decided to fill in the rotting wood with concrete. You can't make this stuff up. So people ask why it capsized. Well, it was a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
So how's that for an intro to this is my family? So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's one way to line a ship, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
different.
Just it's just crazy. So that was the story that I never heard of. So I think I was open to the story. I just want to share with Chris and Andy that because my father had died and I was looking for connection to family, and then this ended up literally in my lap.
Yeah.
And it gets weirder. It's weirder. So I was already an established writer in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And I thought, well, I've got a place where I can write about this, but I couldn't. When I was researching, the internet was not the thing that it is now in the late 90s. I couldn't find anything about the Eastland disaster. And so I didn't know how to research a dead relative who I'd never heard of. And I was struggling with that. And in the meantime, too, I kept rifling through this document that my mother's sister had created.
Yeah.
And here's the other, kind of punch in the stomach of this. So I was trying to find people that might have known my mother's my grandmother's sister who was killed. And I went to another page, and it had lists of my great-great-grandmother and her children. Lots of people. They immigrated to Western Wisconsin. Why that's significant? It was just across the border from where I'd moved. So in other words, I relocated to the mothership without realizing it. And I only moved up here because it felt familiar to me. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. So right then and there, it was one of those moments that made me remember something else. I have a master's degree from Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Systematic Theology, which is not really useful, but but it was interesting. It was entertaining. I like ancient languages. I'm not all that religious, but not religious at all. But anyway, when I was working as a living there on campus, and I got a student job at an adoption agency. And at that point in Minnesota, they opened the records. So people say if you had a birth child, you could request information, not identifying information about their life and their history. If you were whatever. So basically birth children, birth parents could request histories. I was a writer. So I would sit there with the files. They weren't online. I would just sit there with these papers and look through the history. Everyone, the birth children almost paralleled one or both of the birth parents' lives, to the point of naming children similarly, doing similar jobs. And it struck me. It was one of the few things I remembered from that time. And it's like, this is going to come in handy later for you. So right then, my attitudes about life and death, my attitudes about family began to shift. And intellectually, I knew what I was reading, and I knew I had to write an article about this because it was so freaking weird, and it was my family. I thought, oh my God, when I was growing up, I thought I have the most boring family on the planet. And I was always like making up fiction about them to make them more interesting, because it's like, God, to be more dull. And really, like my family, at least my dad's side, it was like Eastern European people. We haven't, kind of a complex. I mean, if we're featured in anything, we're spies, or we're the villagers in the Frankenstein movies. I mean, that kind of thing. So it's like, great. So there was a little bit of, but I thought, oh my gosh. And so, this type of thing began, everything started to gel. But I will have to say that my body and my mind were not in unison at that point, and I hadn't quite caught up with what was going on. But I thought, I've got to write this article. So researching like I normally do, not coming up with too much, I thought, I've got to go to Chicago, at least see the grave of this woman, because it didn't seem real to me. And Chicago, for those who are not from here, is probably about 400 miles from the Twin Cities. So maybe not quite as far as London to Inverness, but just maybe a little bit that kind of distance. So I drove down, planned to drive down one week, and I did it kind of cut it in half. Like I stayed overnight in a hotel, but that night I stayed overnight in a hotel to break up the trip. Things started happening in the hotel room. I mean, it was like I was hearing noises, almost like a generator noise. And at that point, again, I will say very, very skeptical, never all in with this stuff, even though I grew up with a fair amount of it from my father's side. Again, the fortune telling, all the other stuff that typical Romany people do. They were doing all this stuff. And I thought, oh boy, it's like, I believed it, but I really didn't want to partake of it at that point. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. So when this was going on, I thought, oh no. And I started writing it down. And I want to say that to the people who are listening. I started writing it down because I knew there would be a point where I would talk myself out of what was happening. And I wasn't ever intending to write a book. I was going to write this little article and be done with this. But I thought, this is important. This is going to shake my world on its head. I know it, even though I was kind of fighting it. But I thought, I've got to do this. So in the hotel, it got weirder and weirder. It was very noisy, very, very frightening, but not in a way where I was afraid, like you're afraid of a person in your midst. It was like there were entities there. And I thought, the shadows in the room when I turned off the lights were like moving around. And I thought, And as an investigator and as a reporter, I thought, I've got to take note of this. And so I'm studying this stuff thinking, I might be cracking up here. Dad's death might have sent me over the edge. I don't know. But I thought, let's just go with this. And the next day after that weird night, I thought, okay, we're going to drive to Chicago. And I was just totally out of my mind by that point. I had suffered from, whatever that was in the room. I was sleep deprived. I was insane. I was just like, oh, I've got to see this grave. So I made it down to Chicago. And I found the cemetery, but what I didn't realize is a very, very big cemetery. And if
Right.
anyone has heard of, I don't know if the legends of Chicago hauntings travel over to the UK, but there's one called Resurrection Mary. She's Chicago's famous hitchhiking ghost. She's buried right next to where the cemetery where my relatives are. So anyways, this is just one long cemetery. And
Yeah.
it was the first time I'd been there. I'd never seen it. And I thought, how am I going to find the grave? And so I parked and I started walking around, and it was for the United States, it was Labor Day weekend. So everything was shut down. There was
Right.
nobody there in the office. And I thought, oh, damn, what did I do? And so I felt like a fool, even though I knew I was in the right place. And so I was
Yeah.
walking for 45 minutes, going insane, I found a groundskeeper who couldn't help me. And then I thought, so I started walking backward, and then I tripped. And I was like, not pushed. I couldn't feel anybody pushing me, but I definitely didn't fall, but I was like redirected. And I was
All right.
redirected to my car. And I thought, just do it. Who cares if I'm going out of my mind? I went back to my car. And then when I looked at where I parked right in front of the grave. I didn't see it the first time. And I
Oh,
still don't know what that was about. I don't know what that was about, but I thought, oh my gosh. And it's quite a large grave. It's what they did is it's a large
yeah.
marble headstone. I've got it on my website. And
Yeah.
they printed on my great aunt's side of the tombstone, Martha Pfeiffer auf die Eastland, ruht in Frieden. Martha Pfeiffer died on the Eastland, and rest in peace in German. And below her is her baby sister, who also died in Chicago. Behind them are my great grandparents. I didn't even know they were there. And so it's quite luxurious. I'd have to say, very nice, beautiful headstone. And I just sat on it and I thought, I'm home. And it was one of those things, I think, again, having my heart broken open, being sleep deprived, and just being totally kind of boiled down to the essence of who I am. I thought, oh my God, these people, meaning my great grandparents, are why I'm here. I wouldn't be here were it not for them. So there was this understanding for the first time of that deeper level of ancestral connection. And when I sat down on the stone, I was crying. It was just all this emotion. And then I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I just saw a drawing room with all these people in it that I'd never seen. It was like definitely turn of the century. And I opened my eyes again, and they were gone. And I thought, are you here? How could this be? Because again, I was never all in with this stuff. I thought, yeah, right. But I thought something's going on here. And so I was there with them. I bowed very reverentially toward them, like I'd never had before in terms of my family. I thought, oh my gosh, there was a humility.
Yeah.
There was a graciousness. There was an understanding. It was like all of a sudden, you're just not you. You're connected to this bunch here.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do about righting this mess, this lost tragedy? And here's the other part of this story that I should add that made this even more grave and serious for me. My aunt, who was killed, she was 19 years old, who was killed on that ship, shouldn't have been on that ship. She was not a Western Electric employee. My grandmother was the Western Electric employee, but she was pregnant, and she gave her sister the tickets. So in other words, yeah. So there was this sense of, oh boy, I owe you one. I mean, maybe I told my sister later, I said, you know what, were it not for that exchange of tickets, none of us would be here, maybe. The likelihood of that happening. So there was just sort of a pile up of all this stuff that was going on. And I thought, ooh. And it was blowing up my head because I'm still dealing with grief, and I'm having to rearrange my philosophy about life and everything else. And you can't do that instantaneously. There's a way where it just doesn't live in your body at that point.
No.
But I went through the motions of being the very disciplined journalist that I am. I thought I must write the article about Prussian, don't forget. So I went back to my little apartment at that point. I was single, and I was living in a little apartment in St. Paul, nice little place. So I went back to get that article, start cranking that article out. I thought, I don't know what the hell happened there in Chicago, but I thought I got to get this done. So I'm going to write the ending. And I was in a small 1-bedroom, and I was in my little bedroom typing, and all of a sudden in my kitchen, which was maybe a few feet away, I heard this thud, and I thought, what the heck? And all the stuff, when you're in an apartment, when you're single, you put all your stuff on top of your refrigerators. So all the stuff was knocked off my refrigerator. St.
Yeah.
Paul is not on an earthquake fault line. We don't have earthquakes here. And I thought, what's this? And I looked for a second and I put it back again. I'm I've got to get this thing done. So I put all the junk back and I thought, God, this place is a mess as it is. I really don't need to have junk all over the floor. So I put it back. Maybe 10, 15 minutes later, it happened again.
Right.
I thought, oh, Lord. And I thought, what am I going to do here? And I put it back and I was getting kind of annoyed. I was getting very annoyed. And I thought, don't you dare. And I stood there and I kind of like, I was defying whatever it was. I thought, who the hell am I talking to here? But I didn't know. But I was just there kind of, Then I went back and I thought, I've got to finish this. And then again, it happened. And I thought, junk all over the floor. And I thought, who am I going to call? Ghostbusters? There's nobody I could talk to.
Yeah.
I thought, I am cornered. And I said for the first time, I said, what do you want? And I thought, I wasn't looking for this. I don't go I still don't. I still would not be the kind of person that would go seeking this stuff because it finds me all on its own. I really don't need to do that. I wasn't scared as much as, I was scared in terms of just my own, how do I present this? How do I deal with this? I had a real strong need of being, erudite, all this sort of sophisticated, when you're younger, there's the insecurity of that as well. And I thought, I don't want to be like my relatives on my dad's side, part of the kook brigade, I'm not going to start telling people's fortunes. I won't do it. And so there was that conflict too. So there was all this stuff, but all the strands of my family branches were starting to come and close me in.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, you shouldn't have been killed. I get that. So I thought, I'm going to write this article about you and what happened. And I'm going to see what I can do. And in the midst of writing that article, there was a family in Chicago that founded the Eastland Disaster Historical Society. So that was a brand new website, a brand new organization. So they started featuring information and I got in contact with them. So things were happening. But in the midst of all that, I was glad for the Eastland getting recognition. The Eastland is definitely part of the story, but unlike the Titanic, it's not like this great, story because the people that were aboard were, again, immigrants, Eastern and Central European immigrants, children of immigrants. I repeat this all the time in the book, or Southern Italian. And in the United States at that point, I've got some articles from different newspapers from that point. We weren't even considered to be very intelligent or even human. There's some really fascinating articles about how we were seen by the aristocracy of the United States. I saved these things because it's just like the attitude toward us was, somebody wrote, their lives were of no significance except to their families and their employers. That was right from this other author. And I thought, I'm going to fix that. And I didn't know what I was talking about, but I thought, I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but it's just like, I'm going to go back in time, even though not literally. And we're going to look at this again. And I'm going to figure out how to bring this to life. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea how to do family history research, any of this stuff. But I did get the article. The article got a lot of attention. And people were asking me about a book. But the problem was that I didn't know how to credibly talk about the supernatural in the midst of, I wanted to be taken seriously as his historian and a fiction writer and all that sort of thing, but I didn't know how to talk about that. So that was part of the problem. So that happened. And then, shall I go on? I feel like I'm just talking and talking and talking. I'll do if you want. I think Andy might be frozen at this point, at least on my end.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, Chris, I hear you. Yeah.
Very strange, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah. And the supernatural got to Andy, I think. Oh gosh.
This is a very fascinating story. Hello, he's gone.
Oh, he's gone now. He'll probably come back. He'll probably relog.
It's just us two. Perhaps perhaps evil spirits have got into this.
Well, the spirits bring Andy back. What the heck? Anyway, so
yes, I hope they do bring.
Here he comes. Here he comes.
He's coming back. Here he comes.
Here he comes.
Here he comes. Yes.
Can you hear us, Andy?
You there, Andy?
He's there.
Frozen.
Frozen Andy. Oh, no, he's moving. He's moving.
There he is. Back.
Okay, he's back. Okay, this happens.
computer froze. I had to restart it.
It's probably
Don't
my
ask.
relatives, Andy. I apologize. You know how they are.
It did exactly the same thing on Wednesday. I had no idea
really?
what's going on.
We have that happen a lot in our meetings.
Yeah,
But
I think it's because of what we talk about.
I think it is too. I really have had I was just explaining, I don't know if you heard any of that, Andy, but I was just talking about when I was just in the midst of just collecting all this information, and I was very uncomfortable talking about the supernatural. And the other thing that happened too, this was the late, I was piling all this stuff together, trying to figure out how to do this research, how to put together something. And I was connecting actually with living relatives in Wisconsin because they were just across the way. And some of those people, many of them were living in this very small village. They knew about what happened. And they're rural. And again, someone grown up in the city, it was very strange to meet these lovely people who I'm related to, who appeared so normal. I thought, oh my God, I'm related to these people. Well, they weren't like my kooky relatives that I'd grown up with. So once again, I had to readjust my feeling about who my family is. It's like, wow, they're small town farmers. Cool. So there was that. But in the midst of all that, as I was writing things down and coming to grips with the supernatural, I was trying to find people I could talk to. There are many people in the Twin Cities who are involved in, at the time we would call it New Age or metaphysical stuff. Some seemed not as anchored as what I needed. But there was one really well-known psychic here, Echo Bodine, who was she's fairly well-known around, the world. She was helpful, and several other friends. But by the same token, I thought, I don't know how to explain this because I wasn't looking. And the other thing that happened is I was going deeper into this research. I thought, why would a dead person bother with me, somebody so disconnected? And I had this strong feeling that something awful was going to happen in the world. And this was before 9/11.
Oh, right.
And there was one guy that I talked to that said he actually had a premonition. I didn't have that, but I thought something's off about this. Why all this after death communication? Because a lot of it was popping up everywhere at that point. There was even the TV shows at that point, which I didn't watch, like the X-Files, like Charmed, these different things. I really didn't. I wasn't a TV watcher at that point, but they were very much about this type of otherworldly connection. And I thought, what's going on in the consciousness of people? And then, of course, 9/11 did happen here. But before that, I was involved in a really wretched car accident. And so the idea of putting a book together, I couldn't even put a sentence together. And so it took why it took me a long time to finish this thing is it took me about 7 or 8 years to kind of get my mind back working again. And I never did go back to what I was like before. I just learned to heal, hit or miss, try this, try that, try a little allopathic, a little alternative, do whatever. And it took a long time. So I was still writing, but smaller pieces, but I couldn't handle anything like a book. So when I finally did get this book together, it was not what I think it was not sellable. I had, people knew me from the writing community. They said, no, you've got to change it. You have to make it marketable. I said, no, I don't have to make it marketable. I need to tell the story the way it happened with all the weird stuff, all the weird everything that occurred. And as you may know, if you do family history, it's a mess. And people in the UK seem to have a better idea of where they come from. But in America, we're still kind of fascinated if you can even go back 100 years in your history, because we are a newer country. And so that took a while. So I really wasn't, I put it to one side. I thought if the dearly departed want this to go out into the world, fine, but I can't do anything right now. And it took a long time. So I wanted to tell people too, if they're interested in doing something and it takes time, it takes whatever it takes. And in the meantime, about 2017, one of my coworkers, I work for the state of Minnesota in information technology. I'm a computer geek.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues said, I really think you should take this ancestry DNA test. And I thought, I know my family. I know who they are. And they said, no, I think you really should. So I did. And so that kind of launched part 2 of this, where I became a genealogist and a family historian. And because of that, I was able to go back into this family in Chicago and get their deep, deep history and find documents and find everything that I couldn't have done the first time around. So it took a couple of years to get really good at it. But there was part of not just communing with the dead, which I apparently was pretty good at, even though I didn't want to, but there was also getting the actual research right.
Yeah.
I had to get it right. I had to back up everything. I had to do all the records that I could find. I wanted this to be both credible from the research point of view, but I also wanted to say, I'm not shy about sharing this stuff with you guys. I don't know why it happened, but I would have to say that I needed to write that missing piece of history for our country, for my family, for everything else. And the really terrific thing about this was by the time I got the book ready for publication, I was in the midst of edits and my mom was in hospice.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I was in the midst of edits. I didn't finish the edits. I thought my mother has to hold this book because I shared with her pieces. And in fact, she was one of my best critics because she said, "Oh, Natalie, this is awful. You need to redo this." Oh. And so Mom was a great critic. And so I got it to her and she said, "Did you finally finish that damn book?" I said, "Yeah, Ma, I got it published." And I did it myself, indie publishing.
Yeah.
And got it to her 2 weeks before she died. And so she held it and I said, "Mom, here's your history." And so she couldn't, it was hard for her to express her feelings because she used to say, "Oh, Natalie, you don't miss what you never had," in terms of her own mother. But her side of the family, her father's people particularly, were people that I just didn't like for lots of really good reasons. I mean, my grandfather who lived with us, he was okay, but the rest of them, it was like, oh my goodness. So that's why also I was not interested in pursuing her line for a long time because they were some yuck people, but there's the Chicago people that I ignored. They were an important part of my life and her life. So the story began with my father's death and it got out into the world with my mother's death. So the irony of that is not lost on me. And so I thought, Mom, in terms of healing a line of loss and trauma, I think I did with a lot of help. I mean, a lot, not just, supernatural help, but also help from the various genealogists that I worked with. And I became a really good genealogist. I had so many mentors and all that. So, so I want to say for anybody who's listening to this, when you go into genealogy, I think it should come with a warning label. It's like, abandon all hope and all normalcy, ye who enter here, because it can be weird. It can be complicated, but it's like, stay with the questions, stay with the discomfort, stay with the horrible things you'll find, stay with the wonderful things you'll find. But you might just find, what I found is I found myself in the story of my great aunt who was killed.
Yeah.
She seemed to be kind of, as we would say in America, a badass, and she was getting into all kinds of stuff. So I just thought, oh my God, what you could have been had you not taken those tickets. And I thought, I owe you one, honey. And so I've tried to, I think in a sense, I feel a deep honor, a deep sense of obligation, which I've never felt growing up with family. It's like, I owe you one. And so all the things that maybe you wanted to do, like travel around the world, and whenever I look at my Squarespace and it's like Istanbul, Turkey, you made it to Turkey, you made it to India, you went all around the world. So it feels like a promise kept. So that horrible loss of life was not in vain. And now I hope that the story, I'm struck because I didn't write the story to be sellable. I'm not one of these people. In America, there's a term called people pleasing. I'm not that. I am not that at all. I just pretty much say what I think, and I don't try to offend people, but I do anyway. But it's one of those kinds of things where I really want to be true to a story, true to myself, and not so much to pleasing people, because it's like you really can't, please people. But what I have found with the story is one of my closest colleagues gave it to her father before he died, and she said to me, "Natalie, that was the last thing he read. And it brought him such comfort and hope." And I didn't write it for him, but it ended up being for him too. So whatever he brought to that story, was a healing for him too, as he departed. So I thought, damn, I mean, it's one of those things where I wrote it for my family. I wrote it for my family history, and I didn't think that many people would be interested in it, but I was wrong. And I honestly think with all stories, it's what you bring to the story. And the supernatural is there. I mean, I'm on your show because Amazon classified my book as occult fiction. I was trying to be taken seriously once again as a family historian. And I thought, my sister said, "Don't fight it. It's in the blood. You should just embrace the cliche." It's like, okay. So it's been so much fun meeting folks like you and so many people who are doing such tremendous work in the world. And particularly now, the world is kind of strange, as you probably have noticed. And
very.
and so I think shows like yours, voices like yours, and audiences like yours really bring so much into adding speed bumps to the world to keep it from collapsing in on itself, if nothing else. That's what I think. I gotta stop talking. I'm an introvert. I don't talk this much.
It's fine. It makes my job easier.
Excellent.
I'm trying.
I'm a fellow introvert as well, so I know his feeling.
And I've got to tell you also, I'm narrating my own book, and I do have an acting background, and this is not the voice I use. But at first, when I heard myself, I thought, if I do this in a British accent, it's going to sound so much better. But I thought then I'd have to explain why is a British person narrating a book about Chicago. So I thought, but I tried it, and I thought, God, I sound better as a Brit. So anyway, just so you know. So
do the British accent.
Yeah, I can do a British accent, but somebody said to me, "You sound like the Queen," and I thought, well, I wasn't going to sound like the Queen, because we just hear what we hear from TV. When I lived over there, and I was over there for extended periods, I came back with the accent. I mean, I get the accent wherever if I spend any time like in the South, I come back talking just like this, how y'all going to do doing? I mean, it's just something I pick up on. I think because I grew up with immigrant relatives, I could imitate them very easily because they had great accents, So at any rate,
go on. Let's hear the British accent.
Oh, I don't want to hear my British accent. So let me see. I have to read something. All right. Now, laugh at me, would you? Yes, it is possible to be an independent publisher, author. Caveat: possible does not equal easy. But the advantages are tremendous, and don't hate me for that, okay? That's it. That's all I'm going to do. Stop that, Chris. You know that was terrible.
Good. That's good, that is.
Oh, bloody hell. So anyway.
That's what we call Queen's English, that is.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
King's English now.
Well, you need a queen now. You don't want a king. You want a queen. So I'll step in for her. So, I see.
Well, I'm actually. Did you know that I'm 65,455,000 in line for the throne?
Let's remove. Oh, you know what? See, America. I've got to tell you this. Americans are always like trying to find their royal connections, right? And I mean, it's like an obsession here. So when Queen died, it was like, oh, I'm related to royalty, all this. And of course, me with my background, I thought there's no way. And heck, that I'm, because I always thought that the Queen was totally British, and I didn't realize she had Prussian. And well, anyway, so long story short, I did an ancestry test with one of the companies here, and they said, you're related to one famous person. And I thought, who? The Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II. So in other words, you see the theme through my life. Lucky Nick, not so lucky Aunt Martha. And then my family was also, there was a big flood in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where I'm from in 1889. I had relatives in that. So we are not very lucky, but I am related to royalty. The not lucky royalty, but I am related to royalty as well.
Cool. Well, I might be as well, because my surname is Powys, and my great-grandfather always believed that we related, because it's a reasonably rare name in this country.
Really?
People think it's Welsh, but my spelling of my surname is the English spelling. So when people say, oh, you're Welsh, no, because it's Powys, which is the Welsh spelling, and mine is IS. And there's a Powys Castle, and my grandfather always said, there's a link.
Really?
Yeah. But what happens is the Powys sold it out to the Herberts in 1665.
Wow.
So I've got no claim to it.
And if we say 1665 here, it's like, oh my gosh, you could get back that far. It's really, it's quite something for us on this side of things to get back very far. But I know people who are in the UK, they can just go back, till time immemorial, as they say. So it's really interesting.
One thing I must ask you,
please.
Are you what they call HSP, which is highly sensitive person?
I read the book by Elaine Aron.
Oh, yes.
And so I think reluctantly I say yes. I think it's interesting you're asking that, because I have often thought, why would I mean, we have a big family, and I thought, why would I be able to pick up on some of this stuff? And I'm really not looking for it, and just be so sensitive, as you say. And it doesn't necessarily, I mean, sometimes sensitive can mean weak or unbalanced or whatever, but I can pick up on nuanced stuff. And yeah, I would say people have said that about me. And because I come from particularly my father's family, many of them were actually very well known and made their psychics and made their living doing fortunes in Western Pennsylvania. So I would say there's definitely, my dad would always say, it's in the blood, it's in the blood. You can't fight it. And I would say, yes, I think you are correct that I am. I've had difficulty managing it, difficulty picking up on stuff, because I think the biggest lesson I have learned is not everyone's your friend, and the thing is, stay in your lane. Do not, but I mean, when you're younger, I wanted to help people, because I felt whatever. And it's like, you know what, Natalie, no one asked you to the party, stay away. So it's that kind of thing too, but very perceptive, Chris.
Well, what happens is that, I mean, I think I have HSP. I know I have it, but the thing is, when you're at HSP, it doesn't mean you're shrinking wallflower.
No.
Because not at all. It just means you can actually sometimes read a person like a book, and you can pick up on emotions very, very quickly, much quicker than anybody else.
Yes,
you're there, and things are going about 300 miles an hour through your head most of the time.
I like that description. Yeah, that's no wonder we're tired, right? Yeah.
It's a bit like I can't go to a theatre because I can't escape from reality. So I'll be sitting there, sort of, the brain's still going.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting about what you were saying about your family. That some of them, many of them, because this is something I'm looking into at the moment, were they alcoholics at all, or any drink at all? Because the reason I asked,
Lord, yeah, we've got a long family tradition. Absolutely, it's in fact, I don't, because of that very reason. It's like, I'm not going to tempt the fates, but it just seems like it's real. At least on my father's side, there was a real proclivity toward it. In fact, my dad's older brother was one of the first patients at Dr. Bob's hospital. If you know Dr. Bob from Alcoholics Anonymous in Akron, Ohio, the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. So yeah, basically this was in the 1950s, I think. And so absolutely, I think because my dad's family too, the trauma of, the first time around, he found his father hanging the first time around. So the fact that there was that suicide, that violent, traumatic death that affected all of those children in that family. And the trauma translated down, of course, to us. I mean, my mom and dad gave us, I think, a good a life as they could, but in terms of the sadness, in terms of the sensitivity, in terms of the proclivity toward, it's too much for us. So if you drink, you can numb it a bit. That happened to many of my relatives, and it continues. But absolutely. So Chris is really batting a good average here. So what else you got, Chris? What else?
Well, what it is, you see, I've been looking into. So it's not a plug for my last Monday's program, but what I've been looking into is that it appears that evil. I mean, when people drink, it's spirits, isn't it?
Spirits.
Evil spirits. And I found this out. I was looking at a Mark Windows show, and he was talking about a chap that died on an operating theatre, drifted up over a pub, and looked down and saw all these evil spirits queuing up to get into drunks. And then he was revived, and he came back to life again. And I've noticed this all the way along. And as I was saying on last Monday's show, there are alcoholics. They're obvious to spot because they sort of, and all this.
Of course, falling down.
But then there are boozers that will drink and drink and drink and drink, and you can never smell alcohol on their breath, and they're as sober as anything. And they're generally the ones that are like taxi cabs for evil spirits.
Whoa, never heard that.
I really do believe that, because I've actually seen people possessed by spirits. I'm not religious, but I have seen this. And I think that when you said that your family had alcohol problems, I thought, and then you had that haunting. Because what happens with boozers is they might be very, very nice people. They can't help it. They're like a taxi driver. But the evil spirits are looking for someone susceptible to jump onto and attack. And this is what I'm actually getting at. So I'm wondering whether what you had that experience in the hotel room was from the evil spirits that attached themselves to, and of course your HSP you know, you're like a kind of, I hope this doesn't sound rude, I'll say it for myself, I'm a bit like a vacuum cleaner for sort of sensitive people, well, not so sensitive people, but people that have got, shall we say, someone to lean on. You know, people that want to lean on.
Yeah, you bring up something interesting with that. I wondered at first when it happened because it was so unexpected, but I have a pretty good sense of who's good, who's not so good, because I did inherit a fair amount of that discernment as well. I never felt anything evil. It was just that it was unexpected. But I felt a familiarity with these things that were in the hotel room. I felt I mean, there's definitely at first, it's interesting. The aunt who wrote the story, the former reporter, she was very, very religious, so she was very, very fearful, and she was always casting out spirits. And I said, Aunt Pearl, our Aunt Martha, who was killed, she's not a dark spirit. She's mischievous. She died at 19, but she's not a dark spirit. I said, I said, if you believe what you say you believe, then really that should have more power than the supposed fear that you're giving into. So I had to really kind of pull her back from that. But I don't think so. I think that it was more because I knew it was real and I hoped it would never visit me, but it did. And I had to make peace with it. But it's kind of like with living people. The discernment's really strong in me, and I can usually tell who's going to go, bonkers or whatever. And I pretty much stop them right away. And when I was a little girl, there was a neighbor who was kind of a creep. And at one point he came to our school and he wanted to give me a ride home. And I said, no. And he was insistent. And I said, no, I'm not going with you. I'm not supposed to go with anybody who's not my mom and dad. You go home. As it turned out, he was doing things to little kids. So it's that kind of thing. I've always been, and I've always been adamant too. I've never been shy about saying, get out. So in terms of with our ancestors, and I always tell people, not all ancestors are people you want to welcome in. No. Discernment, staying steady, whatever your spiritual practice is, staying steady with that. But I've run into things that have thrown my belief system or stubbornness out of my being, but that was okay, because it's like your beliefs deserve to be crashed upon every so often, because then you have to readjust. Otherwise you become, I think, very regimented and dogmatic. Theology degree here, so it's like I see what can happen to people when they're so sure of everything. And for me, it's learning to ask better questions. I have less answers than I once had once upon a time. A lot of people will say, well, this great tragedy, these souls, whatever. I thought, you don't know that, you just don't know. There's no way to know. There's a cultural imposition by people repeating certain things. But I always ask as a reporter, is that true? Can I absolutely know that's true? And if not, let's just try to go with the hints. Like Carl Jung would say, take the hint. But that's really good you brought that up.
Well, V. McCrennan said, what is HSP? And really what it is, you have a much deeper empathy for people, a lot of empathy.
Absolutely.
So you actually attract emotional cripples, not physical ones, emotional ones.
Used to, for
because
sure.
You have empathy, they will latch onto you. They'll be like bees around a honeypot. And of course, that is to your own detriment, because I read a funny story the other day. Somebody sent me an email, I won't mention who they are, and he dated a girl who was a kleptomaniac, and she kept stealing stuff, put it in his garden shed. So he'd open his shed in the morning and think, hang on, where all this
I'm sorry.
And because he was so empathetic, he felt sorry for.
Oh yeah, see, I'm not like that at all. I'm much too mean, Chris. I've got the Van Helsing archetype. It's just like, I will slay that vampire so quick, it'll be like out the door. I have no patience. I'm very intolerant of terrible behavior, wherever it comes from. It's like, get out of here. And they know I mean business.
But when you were younger, though, did you?
When I was younger, very much what you described was it. But I think you have to learn. You don't have to learn anything, I suppose, but it helps to learn, if you're like this, that you have the power to say, get out of here,
Exactly the same.
And we don't need. And the thing is, and I was for many, many years a self-defense teacher, physical self-defense teacher. And a lot of my clients were women and children who had gone through some horrible things. And teaching people to stand up for themselves, I think, is one of the aspects of the physicality of that. It's like, when you can do it physically, you might be so scared inside, but if you can do this, it's like you're a fierce warrior. And I have to say too, from my mother's side, what I learned from the genealogy aspect of going back on that side of the family, heck, warriors all the way through, dragoons. And then one of my current cousins is one of the founders of Soldier of Fortune magazine. So it's just like, which is a big, special forces, like he's uber, if you want to talk about uber male, uber military, it's this guy. And he's a puppy, he's a big teddy bear, but he really is. But it's like that warrior spirit is in that side of the family. And I've tapped into that. And, I think one of the gifts of the book too is learning to trust yourself, stand up. And, when things are the journey to connecting with spirit or whatever you want to call it, it's not like it's portrayed on television or films. It can be dangerous, and you must be careful, and you must exercise caution. As you point out, Chris, if you're highly sensitive, you got to watch it. And not everybody belongs in your sphere, and kick them out. And no matter how bad they feel, you'll feel worse if you let them in. That's my attitude.
Spot on. You also attract people that play what I call play the piano with your emotions.
What is that about?
What that means, when you're younger, when you're dating, and you'll attract people that like being playing games with you, like say, they like you one moment and don't like you. I call it emotional bungee.
Like a narcissist,
Narcissist, backwards and forwards, driving you mad. Whereas it wouldn't affect a person that hasn't got HSP so badly.
That's interesting.
And I think also what happens with HSP is you can sometimes give out such empathy for people that again you're like what I call a vacuum cleaner. You're sweeping up all this sort of
I wish I was. You should see our
emotional cripples. That's the thing, but
not that much.
Useful in journalism, because you can actually see whether someone's lying or not.
Yeah, and you can get people to talk with you. You're very right. To get people, but the priest archetype too is just like, I'll keep your confidences, and people know that. Yeah. And I have that as well, because what did I study? Even though I was not attracted to it, but very much that whole class of people. But yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying, and you're going to make me think after we're done talking about. But it's interesting what you did bring up, and I can say this goofy story. I'm not going to give identifying information, but somebody very close to me wanted to help with the production of this book, the audio. And to your point, Chris, this person, we're very close. We know each other very, very well. And soon I learned that her intentions were not, it was basically to kind of, take it over. And it's like, no. But she got very far in because, the previous familial relationship. And I thought, whoa. And so once again, I saw that when there's something of influence and some kind of light, that you also attract, to your point, the other stuff as well.
Yes.
And I had to get rid of that. So it's just like, whoa. So it's just like, I think the battle never ends. I just think my own experience and sharpening of my senses and realizing it can, when it's family or a close friend or whatever, you can let your guard down, and you can't even do that. You have to also exercise that constant vigilance, I would say.
I agree with you. I think also when you've been through that, you become, some of the best boxers have got the most fierce sparring partners. The 101st Airborne Division during World War II were the crack lot. Why? Because they're the toughest of jobs. So that made them really good. Now, when you get all these sort of emotional vampires coming towards you, and you get enough of it with this HSP, that toughens you up. So you don't stand for it any longer. Even though you've got sympathy and empathy for people, you will still say, no, I'm not standing it. And you become a bit more sort of intolerant. I don't know if it comes with age or what it is, but
that helps too, doesn't it? It's like, don't let the door hit you on the way out, right? That's what we say here. Yeah. Very good. Okay, we are just going there, aren't we? Yeah.
Did you feel an atmosphere change when you was looking around those graves, as if something was leading you there?
Yeah, definitely. And this is not what I learned from another writer is that it's not unusual for genealogists, although many of them being very religious don't want to admit that, but they'll go to cemeteries that they've never been to before. I guess it's very common. They'll find the very graves they're looking for. I thought I was special and unusual. But
Yeah.
there's a guy who wrote a couple volumes of. He's a well-known expert on German genealogy here in the United States, but he also wrote this book about psychic roots of genealogy, but the stories of people going to cemeteries or finding people. It's like ho-hum, yep, one cemetery, we'll just find whoever. But I think it's very common. And I think what people call supernatural is actually quite natural. It's just that we have societal restraints. We have our respective religious restraints that say, oh, no, that can't be, or that's of the dark side or whatever. Just like, nah, come on, knock it off. It just is. And there's so many things that we can tap into, sources of power and wonder and art and all that imagination and creativity, if we allow ourselves to have that happen. Yeah.
Can I just ask? So these shadows that you're seeing in the hotel, and then you went to the cemetery, do you think that they could have gone with you?
I
traveled there with you?
I don't. It was one of those things. It was almost like a blanket. When I describe it in the book, it was like a Rembrandt painting with those blacks, those different like blacks and blues and that sort of thing. It was very familiar, very comforting.
Yeah.
And why they came in sort of like shape but shapeless forms at the same time, but it wasn't at all frightening. It was almost like awe-inspiring. I thought, what is this? So it was very I think it was something from inside me on the outside or whatever. I think it was in and both out and in, if that makes any sense. Did they follow me? I don't think that they did. I just think that it was part of the experience that was making itself known. But I think it was actually somehow I was generating that without realizing it.
To use like manifesting it.
I think so. I mean, and I didn't realize that until you asked me the question. I just thought, I don't think it was outside. I think it was, if you look at the science, the same DNA, I have this woman and I share DNA. So it's just like, it projected itself perhaps in a very unique way, because my family is kind of colorful and goofy. So they would do something odd like that. And I thought, huh. So I think that's what it was. And I think, again, when I came back from Chicago and all that stuff started happening in my apartment, I did call my mother. And I said, Mom, I think I brought something else back from Chicago with me. And she said, what's that? I said, Aunt Martha. She said, what? And then she said, oh, well, she's not going to hurt you. It's family. She said, maybe she wants something. I thought, okay. So she took it. She was so almost like blasé about it. And she herself was very much of a skeptic. And she said, whatever, just see what happens. So I think because of the way the people that were close to me treated this, I didn't go over the top with it either. It's just like, she's family. She's inside me. She's outside me. And a wrong needed to be righted. A ship needed to be righted. And how do you do it? Through writing. So it was all that. We're going to make sure that she lives. And again, I owed her one, because that death shouldn't have been hers.
No, the reason that I asked that was because you said like you didn't feel threatened or anything bad was going to happen in the hotel.
No.
And then when you got to the cemetery, you was kind of like guided round to where you needed to go.
Yeah.
So I just was seeing if there was a
connection. It could have been. Andy, I just don't even, I don't even know anymore. I think that the only thing I can do is describe the events kind of as they happen. But as I go deeper, I think as we live with the question and the kind of questions you both are asking me and your perceptions, me into a deeper level of all of this. And hopefully the people who are listening to this also look at their lives differently. It's like, whoa. But I can say this. I can say that it upended my life in the best possible way. It taught me more of a connection, and also almost like, I don't want to overuse the servant mentality cliche, but it definitely taught me to be of service, more of a life of service to people. And I definitely was not that early on. It was just like, how can I, be there, and then and my way of being of service is, here's the flashlight, I'm going to point it, but but you have to walk the path. That's how that's the book, because I really can't. Don't you want me guiding you? Because I could lead you into a ditch so quickly, but I can point a light. I can, really, because I stepped into every weird thing that you
point the way, and
I'm kind of a mess, but yes, comedy ensues. So
No, that's cool. Right, we're going to take a quick break because it has been, first hour is gone. I know, it's gone so fast. It always does.
Where'd that hour go? Okay,
I know, too quick. Right, so we'll do this break, and then There is a 10-second countdown, so if you do have to go, once you hear that, just run back to your chair.
I'll be back, yeah.
Yes. So when I find it, I will play it. Everything's
right.
closed when I have to reboot the computer. Right,
Oh,
I'll
no.
see you guys in 4. And please, any questions in capitals. See you then.
Yep.
eight, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And we are back. Oh,
Hello.
right. So we have got a few questions. So what I'm going to do is I'll pop them on the screen, and Chris kindly has agreed to read them out. So,
right on.
Here's the first one. This is from Adam Sandor.
Natalie, just to say, I am in Slovakia.
All right.
I can't pronounce the other words. Sorry. I'll try
Dokuim
my
za, yeah, dokuim za nav. Oh, Adam, I'm going to murder this. I know is ahoy. What part of Slovakia is what I'm wondering. My family's from Osovica, Štitnik, and Oktina.
Oh,
Very nice, fellow Slovak
Yeah.
person.
So
but
yeah,
be nice to know what you just said there. But whatever it is, hello.
So Slovak stuff.
you might be calling us. Let's find out what
Ahoy.
you're saying first.
Just
Right.
very nice.
So I'll do the next question. So this is from Nickname.
Right, nickname. Can
Oh.
Natalie sense disasters? Have premonitions?
Sadly, yes, sometimes. Sometimes I don't. Not as specific. Again, I talked to somebody the other week who was so specific about what he can see. I can feel things like that premonition of 9/11. A lot of people began to feel uneasy around that time, even though in our country, at least, things were going so well. There was prosperity. Everybody seemed to be doing well, but there was something almost foreboding in the atmosphere. Sometimes I can, but I think that's not that unusual. I don't know what you all think, but it's one of those things where I think we all can, but it's hard, some of the stuff that you pick up on. But in terms of disasters, premonitions, yeah, I mean, it's also encoded. There's so many in our family line that I think there probably is a sensitivity to it. We've had so much tragedy. And so I think looks like, smells like, seems like, it's very familiar. So perhaps that's part of it too. Very good question.
Yes, excellent question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question is from Ancient Ruby.
Hello, Ancient Ruby. What
Oh.
has Natalie done in acting? Any films?
Oh, a lot of strange stuff there, Ancient Ruby. I did a lot of, there was actually a group in the United Kingdom called the Fisher Folk, and I was part of that group. They were based out of Scotland, Cumbria Island, Scotland. How's that for a little Scottish way of saying,
good.
And there, okay, that's the end of that. And then here in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, I co-founded with several friends a theater company called the Magic Circle Ensemble. So we did some video work, but no films, but mostly just stage work and a lot of radio dramas and things like that. We did a lot of progressive types of things. We were doing, like in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was a kid, we were doing shows on AIDS and things like that, things that other companies would not touch. And we headed to the controversial. We went to the T.S. Eliot Festival. We did T.S. Eliot plays, and if you've ever seen one of those go on forever. A lot of my plays were produced, so I did a lot of playwriting myself, but nothing that you would know. And then the voice acting stuff that I've done is more local commercials and things like that have long since, fortunately, departed this life. I don't know where they are, but I don't want to know where they are. So not very much, really, just local stuff. Enough though to have experience to create these different characters that I'm creating right now, because, oh my God, I populated a lot of different types of people in that book. And it's like trying to be true to them all, create the different voices, but it's been relatively not easy, but I've been able to do it. Let's just say that. Painful, but I've been doing it.
It's fascinating.
Cool. Thank you. Next question is from Ancient Ruby. And
hello, Ancient Ruby again. Please ask Andy if she knows Jeff Goldblum or related in any way. Problem, no, but she sounds like him.
Jeff Goldblum.
Probably, but she sounds like him. Jeff,
usually I could get Andy Warhol. I don't. Well, I do have Ashkenazi background. Oh, here's another story, y'all. Okay, do a little story here. When I was a kid, we really weren't aware of our ethnicity. It just wasn't a thing. And so my mother, because her father was so dominant in our lives, she insisted we were German. Now, my dad was from old Czechoslovakia. It was almost as if that side was canceled out. Dad's side didn't really matter. And we're German. And we were in Cleveland, and we went to an area in Cleveland that was predominantly Jewish. And I saw a book with Hebrew writing on it, and I'd never seen anything like that. And I pointed to it and I said, I know this. I know what this is. And she said, you don't know what that is. I said, yes, I do. And I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I said, well, you tell me what it is. And she said, it's Jewish writing. And I said, okay. I said, so we're Jewish, right? And she said, no, we're not Jewish, because my grandfather was, let's just say, on the wrong side of history, if you know what I'm saying,
Right.
in terms of his sympathies. And so, yeah, and as it turns out, again, years later, the DNA on my father's side, my name is actually not Zett, but Zhidova, which means of the Jews. Your Slovak friend would know that.
Right.
Žid. Yeah, Yid. So basically it tells our ancestry. At one point, there was probably a conversion to what's called Greek Catholic, Byzantine Christian. And so I'm pretty certain, because Olsavisha, where my father's from, that family goes back to like the 1600s. I've been able to trace them. So that's where it came from. But again, back to your highly sensitive person stuff. How did I know? I don't know, but I know I annoyed my mother because of her father's proclivity toward not liking Jewish people. So, but it's like, yeah. So Jeff Goldblum and I probably are cousins, but on my father's side, because they are also Carpatho-Rusins, so is Andy Warhol. So people mostly think Andy Warhol when they see me. So, yeah. So probably related there as well. So, and I'm related to different women too, but it's funny to be compared to a guy.
Probably be.
I'm guessing that the Ruby is probably a Brit, and we all sound alike. You know, what's that?
Amount of people, but that say that they're related to Marie Antoinette. That's the one, isn't it? You know.
Oh, that's another one. Yeah, she's related to a lot of people, considering her untimely demise. I don't know how that happened. Yes.
That's
those are fun questions. What else you got?
Yeah, I've got a question. Do you think you've had previous lives or previous life?
That's a tough one to answer, and I hesitate because I don't want to lean on any of the cultural descriptions of past lives. But do I think I'm a continuation of my great aunt who was killed? Absolutely, I do.
Your consciousness has existed before you.
I think so. Only because I seemed to follow this woman who was killed. I seemed to follow her footsteps from where she was born to where they relocated, and then recognizing certain things. I think there's something to it. But again, I don't think it's supernatural. I think it's natural because, again, it's the same DNA. And as I pointed out, DNA holds a lot of information. It's like the Rosetta Stone. And as you investigate either records or actual physical DNA, you can uncover a lot of like the weird stuff that you do, strange choices. There's nobody like me in the family. You'll find usually there's somebody in the background, but I would say I'm probably a continuation, the next chapter of this woman's life, the life that she never got to live. I'm living.
Yeah. No, it's just because of things that you've been saying while you've been on tonight. It's kind of like like you're saying with the Hebrew book, and you're only 5 years old. Just the little things like that. It's like you knew what it was, and without anyone having to explain anything to you. So I was just picking up on all that, and then all this ancestral stuff as well. There's a lot going on.
It's been a very hard life, Andy. It's like I'm tired all the time. Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
Your first time. You know what I mean.
It is confusing too, and it's like all of us people who are listening now. It's like when we go back into our past, it's like one of those. It's very, very complicated. We try to make things very simple. It's like, oh, I'm this, that, or the other, but really, there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of conflicting information. There's a lot of people you'd rather not be related to, but there they are. How do you deal with them? Got a lot of those, and then others that kind of ennoble you in the process of your life. You look at them and it's like, okay. When the pandemic first started here in whenever that was, 2020, whatever that the dark time was.
It
was kind of shocking, but I had already done extensive studies on my relatives who lived through, and some didn't live through, the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic.
Spanish flu.
And I looked at what they did. How did they survive? And I thought, okay, I would say you all got through it. I'm going to get through it too, just because you did, because you were, because I always, whether real or not, I try to rely on their strength too. And there's a way where On this side of the pond, many of us are fond of a fictional character called Maisie Dobbs, who was invented by a British author called Jacqueline Winspear. And what we love about it, besides learning the history of World War I and how it affected Great Britain, UK, is the fact that there's this, well, we're just going to get on with it. And I like a fair amount of, we're not going to emote, we're not going to talk about our feelings, we're going to get on with it. And sometimes getting on with it without the booze, I think is kind of something that, you know, is really useful for us, and we admire even if we can't do it.
Yeah.
British stiff upper lip.
Yes, I mean, you know, we could be a little more stiff. I mean, we're very, I mean, Eastern European people, we're emotive, and it's just like, everything's a drama all the time. But I like just the when I was over there, many of the people had survived World War II, and I had no idea how much London had suffered and all the outlying areas, and they were showing me stuff, and I really didn't know. And then to see that, and it's like, how did you all survive? Talk about trauma, and how did you all, you know, forgive a country that just almost decimated y'all? And it's just like, whoa. So deep respect.
Yeah.
As a people, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'll thank you on behalf of
of all the
United
people,
Kingdom.
your country people, please do,
Yeah.
because we do admire you.
Yeah. Oh, well, I remember I did get a text message before. Deborah would like to apologise for not being able to make it tonight, and she sends love out to everybody.
Oh, Deborah. We send
Yes,
love back to her too. Yeah.
Yes, I do as well. And thank Deborah for, and it's very, I feel quite honoured to be invited onto the show to take the place of Deborah. So thank you very much, Andy. It's very kind of you.
No, it's fine. My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Andy let me in too. So you're very nice, Andy.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Any more?
Moving on, because I'm getting embarrassed.
Okay, he's British. You know, we're going to get our stiff upper lip now. Okay.
That's it.
All right. Okay, let's go stiff.
Right. Another question from, I think it's only Ancient Ruby asking questions.
Okay.
But anyway,
where's Ancient Ruby from? Oh,
Ancient Ruby. Here we are. Sorry, you're very young, Ancient Ruby.
Ancient Ruby
is
is
ever heard
with it.
of the surname Swinscoe?
Boy, I don't even know what that would be, Ancient Ruby. No, I do not. I've not heard of it. From looking at it, I don't even know what nationality that would be. Svinsko. Could it be Swedish? I don't know what that is. What is that, you all? Is that a English name? German?
Swin.
Svin.
Right.
Skol.
So I'll just tell you a little story. So I'm from a place in Manchester called Swinton. Yeah.
Swinton. Okay.
Swinton, Swinton.
Okay.
Now, the original name was Swinestown, because there used to be loads of pig farms back in like 1800s or whatever. So that's why I'm looking at that as in my. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Swines.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Swine.
Ancient Ruby's just said it's a Slovakian name.
What did she say?
She said it's. I wish. Was it? I wish I was young. Laugh out loud. Swinsko is a Slovakian.
I'll put it on the screen.
It's Slovakian name. I have not heard it. No. Sometimes I have to look at sometimes when things are phonetically spelled or transliterated, sometimes if I can see them in their original language, it helps. But I don't know that name. No. No, I've seen a lot of what happens here. People like my relatives obviously changed the last name. I don't know why they couldn't have done Smith or Jones, but no, they had to put Zett, which is so clever. And I've got the Polish side where they move the I and just put an E on the end of it because no one would know. It's like, oh my God, Straszynska. So they made it Straszynski, and it's like, once again, you know, they think that they're clever.
Mind you, though, we don't know. Let's be in. I hope this doesn't sound rude or crude. None of us know what our grandparents got up to, do we?
Well, you know, you don't, and it's just like it's amazing what they did. And in terms of like Slovakia, I know they changed at least the areas. I mean, again, it depended also on their religion. The Greek Catholic, the Byzantine relatives, changing names, adding hyphenated things to distinguish from other people with the same last names. It's such a mess. I mean, since I don't know the language real well, and I certainly wasn't around when they were around. There's so many things that a person has to learn in genealogy about, not just a language, but what is the language of a certain period? What is it telling you? And the language, even Old English, okay, Chaucer English is not the same as, current. So it's just like, it's all depends on the era, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's, but I'm going to look that up, Ancient Ruby. Ancient Ruby's on a roll here, by the way.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah, what else you got there, huh?
Come on, start throwing them in.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll look up Jeff Goldblum later, Ancient Ruby, to see,
You never
be a
know.
Hollywood
maybe he'll
actor.
die and leave me money, I hope. So anyway, Jeff, oi Gewalt, give me some money.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, right. So we do have another question.
we do.
The original question didn't come up, so it's
Right.
kind of
Nick,
got to fill in the gaps.
it
Oh,
was
yeah.
about helping others with her ability.
Oh,
So I'm guessing what she wants to know, with the ability that you've got for the being able to see and read, do you use it to help other people? I
yes
suppose for
and no.
guidance.
I think the one thing, nickname, the one thing I learned from my family, for better or for ill, is that my relatives that were doing this for part of their living were so swamped by people day and night that wanted help, that they had, one of them moved several times to get away from people because she was too good at it. And what I learned from her is just to set boundaries. How I help people now is primarily through the vehicle of genealogy. In other words, records, DNA analysis, and that type of thing. So the other stuff creeps into it that way, because I was looking up a birth father for a relative, and partly it was science, but it was also partly intuition. I thought, no, this is not the person. This is the person. So it's kind of like I use science and intuition. And I think that's my best and strongest gift, is to be able to relate to people that way. In terms of would I ever tell fortunes like my relatives did, or read people? Absolutely not. I won't do it. It just takes too much. I can occasionally pick up on something, but I also found when I was doing it briefly, okay, I needed money when I was in grad school. Remember the old 900 dial a psychic thing? I did that for like 5 minutes. It was awful.
Oh, yeah.
But I could actually read the people, and I was like, oh no. And I thought, oh, this is wrong, Natalie. You're going to get it. All the dead are going to come after you. Boom. But I was really good at it. But I thought it didn't feel right. It didn't feel ethical. And the other thing too is I do have a moral compass. I have ethics. And the other thing that happened too with people is that they didn't like what I had to say, because I say what I see. Oh my. And I don't want to deal with that. I mean, I have so many other things that I've been dealing with in life. There's the complications of life, dealing with, this, that, and the other. It's just like my life force now is spent on, part of it has been given this book and this woman, her life. So I spend my life that way. And I think there's more benefit that way. And there's certainly people that are better than I am who like doing this sort of those psychic readings and stuff like that. But when it comes to genealogy, that's where I shine. So if I'm related to you, send me a note and we'll dig it around. But I think that's more productive. But yeah. So
quick question. Have you ever helped anyone who's highly famous? You don't have to give the name. Has anyone famous contacted you to ask for guidance or anything?
I wouldn't say highly famous, quasi-famous, famous-ish, famous-ish. Yes, famous-ish. Because of my involvement in the Twin Cities kind of media scene, there have been people that have asked for help, and because my dad was an entertainer and I grew up around that, I actually, writers and poets really get me going, but in terms of entertainers and stuff, it's like, because I grew up with it, it's like, whatever. So my head isn't really turned by that.
Isn't it?
Well, it's like, you schmuck, who are you? So it's one of those kinds of things. But in terms of myself, people have asked me, do you want to be famous? Like, hell to the no, never. Because I want, like most artists, I want my work to represent me. But in terms of, I'm not that interesting, but my work, is pretty good. So I want that to shine, not me. And also I want people to shine in terms of being engaged enough, not just to sit back and watch, but to engage themselves, to suffer for their art, to come and bring something forth in the world, particularly now. We need so many voices, so many stories. So that's what I hope it does too, my work.
Interesting.
So have you ever done any work for any government agencies?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Have you ever had any work via government agencies?
Yeah,
Or
I
have
mean,
the
I work for the state of Minnesota, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, yeah.
through what you do, through
Yeah,
like
that's
the
my
readings
full-time
and that?
job. Yeah, yeah.
Ah, right. Okay.
Um,
Cool.
but I've never done any extraneous activities in terms of like my cousin who's the special forces guy who gets involved in all sorts of
Yeah.
yeah, I don't do that kind of thing. He's a much braver soul than I am. So but he was involved in some like psychic experiments stuff, which he doesn't really talk about, which I can think is kind of interesting. But I don't know anything
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, I don't really
Oh.
Is it
know.
Men That Stare at Goats? That's an interesting. Have you heard of that documentary?
Yeah, like I don't think it was that. I don't think it was that, but I think there's a lot of other stuff. I need to
Not
watch
far
all
off it.
the X-Files
Mm.
again, but
Mm.
I think that yeah, I don't, but it's one of those things where
Cool.
they just drop it in conversation. It's like, I didn't say that. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah. Yep. I definitely work for the government. I'm a bureaucrat. So, yep.
No.
Yeah. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I do. Nice people.
That's it. That's all
yeah.
that matters.
Yeah, I do. Very nice. I work in the IT area, but we work for the Department of Human Services. And I have to say, Minnesota, I'm proud of our state because we do have so many programs to try to help people, adjust. Mostly our outreach is to new immigrants. I mean, being only a second generation immigrant myself, our family, I wish we would have had those kind of services when my dad was coming up because it was so hard. There was no social services. They starved literally when my grandfather died. And I think we forget that how horrible it was for certain ones. So to have this in place is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Cool. All right, one more question and then we'll go on them. Have you ever tried remote viewing or any like that type of stuff?
I did. I was bored one winter, so somebody brought a class up, and I thought I'd do it. And in fact, my our publicist Michelle, I think that's one of the things she teaches, Michelle Freed. But I've not taken her class, but I did try that, and yeah, it works. I think, but it works for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Have you all done that?
No, I've not tried it yet.
No, I haven't tried it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I'd like to, but I'm a bit. I don't want to get trapped somewhere, not be able to get back.
It didn't hold my attention, but I was able to do it. And I don't know that it's so much psychic. I just think it's just something that your mind can do it. You just have to put certain prejudices to one side and you just kind of start doing it. I think it's sort of like any creative process when you're writing a book, making a song or acting, it's just like you get rid of your personality and you just start letting whatever live. And it's fairly easy, I think, to do.
Yeah. So do you think it was easier for you to do it though, because of how your mindset?
I'm surprised that it was as easy as it was because I do have a lot of, unfortunately, psychic snobbery in me because of my relatives, the way I was brought up, don't do this and you do that and whatever. They were very much disdainful of certain practices. So I definitely psychic snob. So despite the fact that I try to be open, it's like I have those voices in the back of my head. It's like, well, you bunch of damn phonies, what you trying to do, that kind of thing. So there's their voices. Those are other voices that are in my head too, that just kind of cause me to perhaps stop and just say, no, that's your bias, not mine.
Yeah.
Off you go. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Good questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Ancient Ruby again.
Oh,
this is more of a.
She's back.
This is a compliment, but
you remind me of Jeff Gold. Hang on, we had this, didn't we?
Jeff.
This is an
similar to him. Yes. So you remind me of Jeff Goldblum. She's got something about Jeff Goldblum because you speak lovely and similar to him.
This is really funny. I just.
There you go.
Ancient Ruby, you're cracking me up here on this end of things. It's funny about Jeff. I mean, like I said, anybody that has Jewish ancestry, there's certain groups of people that intermarried because they were kind of forced to, but we're all related to each other if you have any of that. So that's what's okay.
My gran was Jewish.
Okay.
Surname Cohen.
Oh yes, the Cohen.
So you can't get
more
Jewish
priestly than that, So yeah.
Well, you can, but.
Yeah, but we're related then, Andy, you and I somewhere, So it's just.
I think,
to a point, aren't they?
Her family well, just quickly, because he married outside the Jewish,
Yep.
when she married my granddad,
Mhm.
because she married outside the Jewish community, they had a funeral and everything for her.
Oh yeah, my
But
mother used to talk about that. Yeah.
He put all the clothes in a box, all the belongings, and set fire to them. And
Yeah, I've heard that. They did that
yeah,
in
Really?
Pennsylvania as
actually,
well.
yeah, it's, yeah,
Funeral was in, I mean, the obituary was in the paper. That's what they did.
yeah. But
Wow.
this is, oh wow. When
Ooh.
were they born? Early, like 1920s.
Yeah, I think that's when this, from my mother's recall, it was probably the 1930s or early 1940s in Western Pennsylvania. So an
Yeah.
Orthodox girl married a Christian guy, and boom, her obituary was in the paper.
Nobody was in. Well, their family weren't impressed.
Their family was like earlier.
I'm just going off like the stories that I've been told from. Like,
I think you need to write a book, Andy. Just my opinion, but that's just
too
me.
lazy. Can't be
No,
bothered.
no, just talking to your phone.
I'll do an audio book. Yeah.
That's good.
But,
Interesting.
so I've got like the Jewish blood.
The Jewish
So,
blood,
yeah,
yes.
we
I
probably
give
are
Altis
related,
Mir. Yeah, okay. He's family.
So.
Mishpacha. Yes.
I have no idea.
The family, that's
I
okay.
can only just
That's okay.
speak English. I can
That's
just
okay.
speak English,
You,
though.
you speak English and we speak, I don't know what we sound like to you, but to me, when I hear British people speak, it just like English, British, Scottish, Welsh. Welsh now, there's a village in Wales with 64 letters. Can either of you gentlemen pronounce that? Llanfair. That's
I know kind of know what it means.
You do?
So it's a description of the village. So it's like there's a church that's near a bridge that goes over a little pond at the side of the road next to a hill, and that's where it translates to. I don't know exactly. That's no one quote me.
Oh my
God!
It's kind of like
But I've heard it was made. Sorry. It was done in the Victorian times for tourism. To make a very long word.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's like 64.
That's what I heard.
And it was Llanfair, go. I think was the end of it. Something, go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a weird language.
I think that's only bit everyone knows.
I like that weirdness of that language. I like Llanfair, like I go, So it's just, I loved Wales, by the way. I was there as well, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's just each part of your very small area is so different. The vibes are. I spent a lot of time on West Yorkshire, of course, with Emily Bronte's house, because I mean, if you're going to be spooky, you got to spend time with Emily Bronte, right? I wrote it in Haworth. Yeah, in Haworth. Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
Now that is a spookier place than where the Eastland disaster is. That is just a spooky place.
But do you know what the creepiest thing about that was? How small were their feet?
Yeah.
They had shoes from like the Bronte sisters.
Yeah.
My hand is bigger than their feet.
Oh.
It was like the shoes were tiny.
I didn't know.
Like, if in the museum where they've got all the glass stands,
that little museum, the parsonage,
they've got all the clothes and books and everything that they had while they was living there. If you get a chance to go back or even have a look online,
I will.
Not seeing kids with feet that small.
They probably were starved. Isn't that a spook? I mean, that is one of my, because my mother loved Jane Eyre, and and I guess it's just I saw the 1939 film with Joan Fontaine and Orson Welles. It's so beautiful and such the music, but it really talk about spooky. And when I went there, it was just like, oh my gosh, to Top Withens and all that. That is still, I have to say, your country has the spookiest places, more so than we do, I think.
Yes, Cornwall especially, because I mean the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to have come ashore in Cornwall. And that's
Cornwall's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Cornish villages have got Hebrew names.
Cornwall is its own entity, is it not? I mean, I just remember it just being so unusual. I don't know much about it.
Different to everywhere else.
Yeah. Excuse me. So
it is really.
It's magical, isn't it? It's like, is it King Arthur and all that was down there? And
King Arthur, right?
Apparently, he was in Wales. According to two historians,
right,
he was actually, well, we don't really know, but they're written. There was two King Arthurs, and if you go on to richplanet.net, there's a chap called Richard D. Hall. He's interviewed.
Oh characters,
and apparently Arthur was Welsh, so they say, and the Ark of the Covenant. So they believe, these two historians. I'm just acting as I always say. Just repeating what they said. Is somewhere hidden under a hillside in Wales.
What?
That's what they believe.
So this was there was debate. He was always taught to us as mythological, but I'm getting the idea that he was
He's
real, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was two
Oh,
of
he
them.
did exist.
Yeah,
Wow.
And
There was
yeah,
two of
because he's married to Guinevere.
Guinevere, yes.
Yeah.
Queen Guinevere, Camelot.
And even like the Knights of the Round Table,
yeah.
some of them have been proven to exist.
Like Lancelot and all the
Like
rest.
these
yeah.
record. I don't know which ones. I can't remember without having the
That's fascinating. So a lot of
information in front of me.
Yeah, a lot of information that we were taught of was mythological is now the more research people are doing, whether it's their own history or their world's history, is turning out a lot of the stories. And I would say this too with family stories. A lot of the myths that I was told actually did turn out to be true.
Someone in chat has said, and I'd back this up because this was on richplanet.net, that Welsh and Egyptian is very similar.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a.
Someone's put something in about that.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welsh descends from
ancient. Welsh descends.
Really?
From ancient Egypt.
I didn't know that.
Nope.
Well, Welsh are very unique, I would say. Very, very different. The musicality, I remember.
Oh, yes.
I mean, really beautiful. Yeah. Yes.
Well, the English have always been at war with the Welsh and the Scottish, and the border has moved, hasn't it? It's moved because a castle that my lot is supposed to be from was in Wales at one time, then it was in England, then it's in Wales, and it's sort of on the border. It's just
I don't know how you wrap your minds around that. That's just like for y'all just have such a small area compared to what we have, this ginormous country. And but you're all so different. I mean, wherever you travel, it's such a different vibe, I would say, which is fascinating to me.
Well, yeah, it's like even if you travel half an hour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Completely different.
Completely different.
You have a different accent.
Yes.
And just different lingo as well.
Yes. I learned that.
That's frustrating.
Yes, it is. For an American, it's real. When I was working in English.
Well, sorry.
I mean, when I worked in a bakery in Scotland on that little island, and they would come in and they would start speaking whatever it was, Scots, Gaelic and stuff. And I said, for God's sake, speak English. Because it's like, I didn't know what they were talking about. They were just kind of giving me a hard time, because it's American,
Well, in North Wales, if they hear an English accent, they immediately start speaking Welsh.
Yep. Yeah. North Wales. Wasn't there a return to the Welsh language at one point in the north? I think so. Yeah. Yes. Castle Conway and all that.
Translate hieroglyphics directly into Welsh. That's right. That was Richard D. Hall's show.
I got to look that up. That's fascinating to me. I did not know this.
richplanet.net. It's on there, and it's absolutely fascinating.
That is interesting for me, having studied ancient languages because of my theology degree. I did have to study hieroglyphics, and I never heard that. But that doesn't mean anything because they only taught us what they. Their bias. So I will look this up.
Yes, but it's always, but it is very strange. I mean, I've been to North Wales, and you go into a little village, you go into the post office, and they go English. Start rattling off in Welsh. And it's really not liked because what happened in Wales is
a lot of bad feelings.
1920s, they forced them to speak English. They weren't allowed to speak Welsh, and they're turning away.
That happens in so many places, like our Native Americans. That they forced them to go to the religious schools, and they took away everything, the language, whatever. And several of my relatives married and were living up on the various reservations here, and it's just like there's a big return to the languages of the original people.
Right.
It's like a movement, I think, across the world at this point, which is not a bad thing at all. It's a good thing.
The funny thing about Welsh, it's so alien to the English language. It's so different.
It is different, isn't it? It's just like it's not like anything I've ever seen. It's a mystical
every year
language.
I used to go on holiday, vacation. With family and that to Wales.
Yeah.
North Wales.
It's beautiful.
Blackpool or North Wales. So it was pretty much Wales every year.
Wales every year. I envy you. That's a beautiful place. I think the north is just gorgeous.
The north generally dislikes the south of Wales. If a northern
the north-south
marries a southern Welsh woman, then they get a bit upset about it.
Yeah, really? I just
It's
remember
more
the North.
English the South than it is the North. Is more
Is
Welsh.
it really? That's
Yeah,
what I
well,
remember.
English
South,
influence, South.
yeah, South Wales is like the proper Wales.
Is it?
Because
Okay.
then you've
Like,
got,
like
'cause
Cardiff.
you've got like Wrexham, then Rhyl and Prestatyn. Rhyl and Prestatyn, they're more your holiday places where people go away for the week or the weekend or whatever.
Yeah, and they go there.
But Mid and South Wales is like that's the real Wales.
Wow. Wow.
Hmm.
I'll have to go back
Yeah.
and visit the real Wales.
Yes.
We went. We just come out of lockdown before the second part of lockdown,
Mhm.
and there's a place called Prestatyn, and there's a little village just outside. There's a little village called Dissif.
Okay.
And there's a waterfall, and it's about 30-40 foot high. And there's a big wall. You can walk up to. It's a steep walk. I felt like we were dying by the time we got to the top. But I used to go when I was a kid. You get to the top, you go around this fence, but round there's all caves and everything at the top.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
whoa!
It's amazing.
Oh my gosh!
It really is.
Oh my gosh!
They're not deep caves. You can there's a few tunnels like 10-15 foot long, or there's a few like you going in then these like dead ends, so you got to turn around and come back out.
Wow!
But I think if you went over a bit of the landscape, there's some more on the other side. But
wow, that is so cool.
You'd need the proper equipment to go there.
Yes, it's interesting. There's a film called How Green Was My Valley in the 1940s. It was all about Wales and just all the mining. It's very similar. A lot of Welsh actually came to Pennsylvania where my ancestors moved because of the mining.
Joe said my gran was Jewish.
Yeah.
He was also Welsh.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Because the name was Ian Mafanwe.
Oh, what?
So Ian Mafanwe Cohen was the name.
Oh my gosh. I've never heard of such a thing, but now I have.
Yep. That's all right. I can't
you're
believe
bringing up
that.
a point of how complicated family history can be. And it's just like, you're not just one thing. We're all things, which I think is fascinating.
It's not just the paranormal that goes down.
Oh no, that's more spooky than anything paranormal. It's like, give me a floating ghost, but it's like this stuff. It's like, oh my God, blows my head up. But again, I think the paranormal is not that para. It's just purely normal for the most part.
Yeah.
If
you're experiencing it,
it's just
pretty much on a daily basis.
Yeah,
it's more normal than normal.
It is. It's actually more. And I just figure that I'm sad to say I've gotten used to it because there was that excitement at first, but excitement just doesn't carry you through. And it's just like, okay, I've integrated you, but I think it takes a long time for somebody's mind and body to catch up to this stuff.
Yeah, it's the acceptance of it.
Yes,
I think.
And integration and the power of it and all that. And again, I think that you never learn it completely. You just keep asking questions.
No, well, when I first started the really big encounters, like with shadow people and all this stuff, and it was all happening in one house. It was freaking me out.
Yeah,
because it was on a daily basis. I lived in this house about 5.5, 6 years, and it was pretty much from a couple of weeks of moving in there.
Oh wow!
So I moved out.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah,
it's too much, huh?
There was everything. It was growling. There was UFOs. There was shadow people.
Oh my gosh!
Full body apparitions. Stuff moving around the house.
Lord God!
I even think I did. I pulled something out my nose.
Really?
So, with the full story to that, people believe I was abducted. But
I've heard that thing with the what is it with that nose stuff? I've heard that too from people.
It's only about. I'm trying to find something. Right,
so I've got
this. I've got a phone pin for obviously taking your SIM card out.
Yeah, sure. So yep, like that.
That bit. It was about
that small.
Length, bit longer than that. But that's probably about 2 millimeters.
Oh,
and it was hollow, and it's a little white tube.
You're cute.
So I took it out my nose. My hand was pretty much inside my nose.
Did you have nosebleeds, or how did you know that you had that in you?
I'd been getting a couple of nosebleeds, but I'd been having a lot of dreams about UFOs.
Whoa!
And there's Star Wars going on in the sky, and I kept seeing the same bloke in my dream, an oldish bloke, grey hair, stocky, grey beard.
Yeah.
And every time I seen him, he'd look at me and go, "What are you doing? You're not supposed to be here.
Oh,
How
Lord.
can you see any of this?" And then I'd start running off because he was trying to chase me.
Oh my gosh.
And it was in different locations. Some locations I know they exist. Other
Whoa.
locations I don't know. I've not been there yet. I don't know if they're real. And then this one, I just woke up. I felt something in my nose, and I put my hand, and I pulled this thing out.
Whoa.
And you know when you can smell blood on your hand?
Yes. I know that. Yeah.
It was that, and I had a white unit. So I'm trying to feel to put this thing down. I thought I was that tired. I thought I'll have a look in the morning.
Oh my God.
Anyway, woke up in the morning, no blood on my hand,
Really?
no blood on the covers, nothing on my
kidding.
face,
You're
no on
kidding.
the pillow. The white unit, so it's a white IKEA box unit.
Yeah.
So they're like pure white,
Yeah.
nothing on that, and even the little tube, it had a glass sheet over the top,
Holy crap.
and so it was on that. Oh yeah, I had that. So there's a glass sheet, and it was made to fit this top of this unit, and I'd left
Jeez.
it on there, and it wasn't. There was nothing there. There weren't even any blood. There's nothing. Even looking at the glass, there was not even any fingerprints on there. Nothing.
What the heck? So, what did you think of that? I mean,
forgot about
I've
that
heard,
glass.
I've
See?
heard this type of thing. I've had a similar experience. What is it?
I don't know. I didn't think that much into it. I just thought, oh, it's probably rolled off. I did look on the floor, look around the area, and I pulled the unit out. But I couldn't see anything, or there was nothing there.
Gee whiz.
But then it's like that side of my nose feels collapsed. Now, I've only ever had 3 operations. One was about 3 months ago. I had a hernia done.
Oh.
The other one, a bit more personal, I had the snip. That was about 2009.
Okay.
And then when I was 6 years old,
Yeah.
I had my tonsils and my adenoids removed.
Oh yeah. Sure.
So unless it was something from when I was 6, I'm
Yeah.
50 in a couple of months.
Yeah.
This happened about, so was it 3, 6, 7, about 8 years ago?
Oh wow, that's
So
recent.
yeah,
That's
so
recent.
42. So unless this piece of plastic had been in my nose for
All that
36
time.
years,
Yeah.
I don't think it was that.
I don't think so either.
No.
You would expel that a long time ago. Foreign
But
object.
it's like I just bore you quickly.
Yeah.
One of the things, we used to have rabbits, and we kept them in a hutch in the back
Oh,
garden. We used to let them
cute.
in the garden and run round. And I was off work, middle of summer.
Yeah.
And then, do you know when you just feel like there's something watching you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I looked in the
Quite a
sky,
bit.
and I could see a what looked like a tiny silver ball in the sky. It was like a couple of miles away.
Oh Lord.
I'm looking. It's like, oh, I could see, and it was just there. And I didn't feel uncomfortable, and so I was like, letting the rabbits out. I used to let them out, clean the hutch, put fresh straw, sawdust, and all that in. Then when we was going out, we put them back in, just in case anything happened to him. So did that, chasing around the garden, probably took about half an hour. And sorry, I've just got to mark a couple of questions. And so I did that, and I looked up again to the same part, and it was still there. So I thought, right, okay. So I went in the house. Anyway, next morning, same routine. Go out, check the rabbits, because a few foxes and that round the back, because there's a lot of trees and everything.
Yeah.
Same again. I just, out of curiosity, I just looked in that same exact
spot
point.
Yeah.
So say you're looking at a compass, and it was whatever degree. So I looked at, and it was there again.
Whoa.
And I'm like,
Oh heck.
And that's when I started feeling uneasy, because when I was telling Deborah Hartswell about this, she does a BBR group. I did my first podcast recording with her. She said, did it feel like you was being observed? And it wasn't until she'd said that, it was like,
oh my
that's
God.
what it was.
Ooh.
And it was like, I got goose. It's like, this isn't right. And I looked up, and it felt like the way I worded it was, it felt like they knew that I knew that they was watching me.
Oh my God. Yee. Gods, man.
And then another time, there's a person that was living with her daughter. She come into the bedroom to get something. So I was in the bedroom. I think it was getting stuff ready for work. and the window tilts open vertically rather than opens vertically. Opens horizontally rather than vertically, so it tilts out like that. So if it rains, it runs off. I heard growling coming from right underneath
growling.
the window.
Oh, I don't like that. Okay.
And I'll try and do it. I did it the other week, and it was spot on. So it was like,
oh no, now that would do me in. Now that I would get scared.
And that lasted for about a minute, 30 seconds to a minute.
All. Well, the longest minute of your life. Whoa.
But imagine if you look at the bottom of your screen, so where your zip line is in your collar, and the sound was coming from there. That's where it was on the window.
Oh God. The window very good description.
Yeah. I wanted to see where it was, but I thought if I put my head out that window,
you might not get your head back. Yeah.
And then, but as I'm looking, I'm thinking, what if there's something at the window and I just can't see it? And this is 16 foot up, because floor to gutter or floor to roof is about 22 foot.
Yep.
And obviously with the other 8 foot, so roughly 16, 17 foot.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You're a good storyteller. This is incredible.
That was
that's memorable. That I wouldn't like. I would not enjoy that. I've never had that. I think about the UFO thing, but not that. Ooh.
Yeah. But when I was the other person that was there, I'm like, can you please tell me you can hear that? And she started laughing, like nervous laugh.
Oh yeah. Like,
I'm like, thank God. I went, go and have a look, see where it is. He's like, no, you go and have a look. Oh, ain't that stupid? And we was laughing, but it was nervous laughing. And we both just stood there
looking at each other,
looking at it. And then it just stopped.
Wow. It's weird, isn't it? But I think that as humans, we are blind and deaf compared with other animals. I mean, how many times have you seen a dog look at something and stare at it, and we can't see it, and hear things that we can't hear? And I think there are different dimensions all around us that we can't see or hear.
Yeah. It's our visual and sound frequency isn't. The scale of it is tiny compared to anything else.
Compared to ultrasound and all that stuff. But you bring up a good point, Chris. That's something that our animals. We have 4 cats, and every so often they freak out. We don't see it, but that they see something.
Well, I actually think that we lost telepathy because we can actually. Used to be able to communicate over a long distance using telepathy. But we can't. Very few people, and I mean, I think it's a little bit late for me today, but there was an amazing coincidence. A lot of people say there's
amazing coincidence.
Of well, I'll probably mention it another day. It's a bit of I wouldn't say it's a long story, but it's quite an intriguing one of a 1,000,000 to 1 chance encounter. I don't. Have we got time, Andy, for me to just mention this 1,000,000 to 1 chance?
Yeah, because I've just got to give an update about something that happened when we did our last investigation. So, you tell that, and then I'll do
very,
this
very quickly. My sister, when she first started work, she's much older than me, my sister. This must have been in sort of the 60s, late 60s, something like that. She was just going out to lunch or something, and there's a girl there. She must have been in her 30s, maybe 20s, I don't know. And she had loads of papers around her. And I just said, what are you doing, sort of thing? And she said, and then she told her this amazing story. She was in Berlin at the end of World War II in 1945, and they could hear gunfire in the distance, and they knew the Russians they thought were about 20, 30 miles away. And she ran an errand for her mother. And what had happened, the Russians had made a breakthrough. And when she got back to her house, there was just smouldering wreckage there. And because she proved she'd lost her father a few years earlier, she only a little girl. And there was a retreating German regiment, and they said, look, we're going to surrender to the Americans. Come with us. And they took pity on her. And lucky for her, they found her. And she went with them. And I think that instead of surrendering to the Americans, they surrendered to the British. Because, cutting a long story short, she ended up in an orphanage in this country, in Surrey. And anyway, she'd always wanted to go to Argentina. She'd had this strange thing about Argentina because she didn't have any family.
Oh, wow.
She saved up all her money and she went to
Uh-huh.
Argentina to this particular place, and she sat in this hotel room, and she was absolutely depressed while she was there. What am I doing here? I've always wanted to come here. And there was these lovely gardens outside with raised, fish ponds and things like that. And she sat on this seat, just depressed. She thought, I always wanted to come here. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
A woman came and sat next to her. It was her mother.
Oh,
Wow.
That is a million to one chance, isn't it? And the girl,
yeah.
this was trying to get immigration papers to get her mother to Britain.
Oh my gosh.
That is quite
Wow.
a story.
Nothing
Now,
surprises
why
me
did she
anymore,
have
though,
this
does it?
idea? How,
Yeah.
I don't know how our mother got to Argentina. I just do not know.
That's
but the thing
incredible.
is incredible. This
It is
woman
incredible.
sitting next to her, it's her mother.
That's
Jeez.
bringing my point
Well-
back home. That's exactly what happens. That connection
Yep.
is forever, I think.
Synchronicity.
Synchronicities galore, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Aplenty.
yeah, everywhere.
Good story. That's a good
It's so
story.
much. I've had that happen so many times last few weeks. Just little things,
Little things
but
that
it
add
wouldn't
up.
yeah,
that
but
you
it-
pay
yeah,
attention
it wouldn't
to.
normally happen. Yeah. Yeah. If you take notice,
If
you know
pay
they're there.
attention. Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, I was going to say, and we did an investigation, not Wednesday gone, the Wednesday before. So there's me and this girl called Ali. We do our investigations now on TikTok. And
Oh, do you?
then transfer the video, reformat it, and put it up on YouTube.
Okay.
So we'd gone to this church ruins. It's like literally about a mile away from where I live.
Okay.
So we got there and we were walking around. It was all right. And then we started walking down to the ruins. Oh, no, I went back to the car to change some of the equipment. Walking to the ruins, and we both got the worst horrible feeling that we've ever had. Like threatened. We felt threatened.
Uh-oh.
So when we've done it before, we've had warnings like, right, it's time for you to leave. And I get that gut feeling. So it's like, right, we're going now. And I go, I don't need more than one warning.
Oh, boy.
But this one, we're both walking down, and at the exact same time, we got, because we was talking about afterwards, we got the message, you need to get out of here now.
Okay.
It was that there wasn't any politeness about it. It's like, go. And I said to Elle, I went, right, don't run. We'll walk.
Okay.
You walk facing that way. I'll walk backwards so we can both, we've got
Oh.
180-degree vision
Oy.
or 360 or whatever. And we take our time. But when I said about not running, that was kind of my key, was if I start running, you need to start running with me.
Okay.
And it was just horrible. So then we stayed there for a bit, and we sat outside the cemetery and that. But it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in Northampton. So we stayed there for a bit, and it just didn't feel right. So we moved on to another location, one called Kingsthorpe, where we've had quite a lot of encounters there, a lot of different stuff on video and visual stuff, and just all sorts of weird stuff go on. We got there, walked about a bit, still didn't feel right, and we both felt sick because of this first incident. Now, I've never physically felt sick on an investigation before.
Whoa.
So anyway, so Ellie, I know her through my partner Becky. They work at the same place. So that's I said. I went and got my flu jab today. So
Okay.
Ellie was in there.
Okay.
So that's where she works. They all work in the pharmacy. And she
Okay.
was saying that night she went home, she started throwing up.
Oh, no.
The next day she went into work. She threw up in work.
Oh, no.
Was sent home. She was ill for 3 days.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And not food poisoning, nothing like that. And it was, we
Just-
think it was all related to whatever it was.
Whatever you were close
whatever
to.
we encountered.
Oh,
Because I had headache for a couple of days and I didn't even think about it. It was just,
it wasn't.
it was just one of them, and
It's one of them.
didn't put two and two together until I spoke to Alice earlier on today.
Yay.
Very strange.
You guys are very brave. Whoa. I just wait for it to come to me in the living room. Okay. I don't want to go to any houses. So anyway,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that was that. So sorry for taking up some of your time, but I just thought I'd share
It's
that
fun
with
to
you.
talk to. Yeah, I love this stuff.
Right. Well, we have gone over the 2 hours.
Yes,
so
we
we've
have.
but I have got some. Can we do some quick fire questions?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Let's
'Cause
go
we've
crazy.
been-
Yeah.
because of these networks that run in the US, we can only go over by so many minutes
Okay.
because we have a time slot, so it's a bit.
We're going to get kicked
got
out pretty
careful.
soon. Okay, well, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right. So I'll just throw these out to you quickly. Ralph Winter would like to know where was you the day JFK died?
School, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. No worries. Another one from Ancient Ruby.
Oh.
I feel you will write another book, Natalie, and a
Ancient
bestseller.
Ruby.
Just a feeling, and you should do more acting. And I also feel you are very, very good.
Oh, yours very nice, Ancient Ruby. I don't think I have the will to go on with some of this stuff, but the closest thing I'm doing to acting now is narrating the book, and I probably will write another book. Whether it sells or not, I'll just do the usual what I do. But thank you, Ancient Ruby. You are a delight. Thank you.
Right. Chris, do you want to read this one?
What's that?
So
I'm just saying to Chris. Oh, sorry.
You're cutting each other off.
Sorry, sir. I just said good luck with the book.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
If you say it, it'll probably happen. Yeah. Jeff Goldblum and I will do a duo book, I think, together.
Good idea.
Okay.
Right, Chris, do you want to read this next one?
Certainly.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So this is
Nickname.
from Nickname.
What cases in the unknown field fascinate Natalie?
Mm.
Where in the world would you like to investigate?
Well, we have an unsolved murder in when I was growing up, and I have a feeling that I know who might have done it. I was a pretty young kid, but if there was a way to go back into that and get the DNA and everything else from that situation, that would be a gem. That's the only one that kind of haunts me, and I think I might end up, doing something with that at some point because I think I know who might be the person.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. It's a horrible story, but it was one of those when you're a kid and these things happen to haunt you for the rest of your days if you're sensitive too.
Yeah.
That's
good
questions.
Next one is again. Oh,
Joe
Weeks. Go on, Chris.
Sorry, I don't mind. Does Natalie believe that people that have been past visit us? That have passed, rather, visitors.
I don't know that I believe. I've experienced it. If you come to belief, I don't have much belief, but boy, do I have some experiences that are kind of causing my world outlook. But in some cases, yes. Why? I don't know, Joe. I don't know why certain ones of us get haunted by these people. I was one of those I don't go seeking this stuff. I would never do what Andy does. Is just like, oh, but it comes to me anyway. And again, I just think it's like any other strange gifts or proclivities that we have been given in a lifetime. It's just like some things you can just do. You have a gift at, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Next question is from Blue Shift, and he'd like to know, what's your star sign?
My star. I don't know what's a star sign. I'm a Libra, but I don't know is that a star sign?
Yeah, star sign.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm not really deep into astrology. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just reading out what people are writing. V is about what I was talking about before. There's an ancient Egyptian princess.
Boy, the Egyptians got around, didn't they? Huh? I got to investigate this after we're done.
Yeah, so we've got Scotland and Wales now.
Scotland, I believe. Scotland's another spooky place.
Didn't they? Didn't let the Bangles walk like an Egyptian?
Yeah.
Oh, the Bangles. Yes. Very good. Walk like an Egyptian.
Here you go, Chris.
Okay. V. McCrinnan, does Natalie know the name
Sherlock? Is this another Slovak name that I don't know?
Oh dear, Sherlock.
No,
Sherlock?
spelled like that. Sherlock. No, I've seen variations on names similar, but I don't know the specific name Sherlock. I do not know. This is true.
Okay.
No.
Oh, no,
right. And then the last question, I'll throw it over to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you. It's Ancient Ruby. What does Natalie make of the cryptoids DM being seen all over the world?
I don't know, Ancient Ruby. I hope they don't come visit me, but I did hear actually of a Native American woman in Minnesota, not too far from here, that she actually recorded something that happened recently. It was creepy. So I think that they are there. hope they don't come visit me, but I think they are there. This was up in the tribal areas that are very remote and that sort of thing. So I think that it's a thing, but I don't know much about it, and it fascinates me more than it once did. Let's just say.
Look at these noises around the world. You can hear strange.
Yeah, what is that? I don't know.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
These
I don't
humming
know either.
noises.
I know less than I did when I was 18. You should have asked me that question. I knew everything then. Now it's like, I don't know what's going on. So I'm lost in
No
space,
idea.
you guys. Yeah.
Right. So that brings us nicely to the end of the show. Well, not nicely. I'd have carried on for another 2 hours, but
We could talk.
unfortunately we can't. Yeah.
Yeah. That's been
Right.
delightful.
So it has. So thank you everyone in the chat. Thank you, Natalie, for coming on. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris, for coming on and co-hosting with
Thank
me.
you.
It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.
It's an honour.
Been a pleasure.
We're back on Wednesday at 7:30, where we've got Paul Ascuff or Ascuff. Not sure how to pronounce his surname. He'll be joining us then. Sunday night, I'm doing a stream on paranormal encounters where I'm being interviewed. So that should be fun. Don't know what I'm going to be talking about yet. So yeah, if you can join me on that, that'd be great. Once I get the link to it, I'll share it on my Facebook profile.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's everything. So thank you again. Thank you, Joe, for moderating. And that's everything. I think.
Thank you.
Anyone got anything to say before we go?
Just thank you. It's been a delight, and you could keep talking in those accents of yours because I love it. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the people who have joined us, and it's a privilege. So thank you so much.
And thanks, Andy.
Yeah,
Much
no, it's
appreciated.
been great. Really do appreciate you both coming tonight. Been amazing. Right, so I'm going to say good night now. I've just got to find the outro video. It's here somewhere.
Remember, thumbs up and subscribe. That's the usual one, isn't it?
Yes.
Thumbs up
yes,
and
please.
subscribe.
Yes. Please subscribe and put the thumbs up.
Yeah, and come on, join on TikTok. I am 16 away from hitting 1,000 followers.
Wow.
Oh, then I got to do it.
Oh,
all right.
So I just need 16 2 hours ago.
Right. Greatly off air, I'm going up to TikTok to find you.
Yes. Thank you. Right. So we'll see you all Wednesday. Have a great weekend. Good night.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.